Hello everyone, welcome back to episode number 3 in our 5-minute Bible study through each chapter of the Bible. Being episode 3, we are on Genesis chapter 3 today. Remember that all of the information that I'm going to be reading here is available for free as a digital download on our website, tobelikechrist.com. And if you're watching this sometime in the future, there's a hard copy book available out on Amazon. And if there is, I'll put a link down in the description. So Genesis chapter 3, when did the events of this chapter take place? Genesis chapter 3 is a difficult chapter to date with specificity because we're not told how long Adam and Eve lived in the Garden of Eden. It could have been 5 days, it could have been 5 years. All we can say for sure is that chapter 3 is the first recorded history that we have following the creation of our universe. In terms of the key characters in this chapter, we have God. He's the creator of the universe, of earth, of the animals, of man and woman, and everything. We have the first man, who we finally figure out in this chapter is named Adam. The first woman, Adam names his wife Eve because she was, quote, the mother of all living. And then finally, no good, rotten character, and that is the serpent, a crafty deceiver who convinced Eve to disobey God. All right, so that's the when and the who. Now let's talk about the where. Where did these events take place? Well, as we mentioned in the last chapter, God created the first man and woman, and he put them in a garden in the east of an area known as Eden, according to Genesis chapter 2, verse 8. And no one knows for sure where exactly God planted this garden. Our best hint is the names of the 4 rivers that flowed out of this region of Eden. They were the Pishon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates River. So now it's time for our outline of the chapter. The first section, verses 1 through 7, the first temptation and the first sin. So chapter 3, as I mentioned, introduces us to a new character, and that is the serpent. The serpent came to the woman and he asked her about God's rules regarding which trees her and her husband were allowed to eat from in the garden. The woman told him correctly. She said that they could eat from every tree except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and if they ate of that tree, they would surely die. But the serpent told her that she was mistaken, and if she ate the fruit of the tree, her and her husband would be, quote, like God, knowing good and evil. So the woman found this to be a tantalizing temptation. So she took the fruit and she ate it, and then she gave some to her husband Adam, and he ate some as well. And immediately after they did this, the text says that their eyes were opened and they realized that they were naked, and they tried to make clothing out of foliage to cover themselves. In the next section, verses 8 through 13, God confronts the man and woman about their disobedience. So Adam and Eve, they tried to hide from God in the garden, but they were obviously unsuccessful. No one can hide from God. When God found them, he discovered that they had eaten from the forbidden fruit and they had disobeyed his one rule. Adam blamed Eve, his wife, for giving him the fruit, and Eve, in turn, blamed the serpent for deceiving her. And so after passing the blame in verses 14 through 19, there's a curse put on the serpent, the man, and the woman because of their sin. Sin is disobedience to God. It's doing things that are contrary to his nature, contrary to the good world that he initially created. God cursed the serpent above all livestock and above all beasts. And in a prophecy about the future, God said to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. God told the woman that she was going to have pain when she was bearing children, and that her husband would rule over her. God told the man that the ground was going to be cursed because of his sin. He would have to labor with difficulty to grow food, and eventually he would return to the ground and to the dust from which he was created. So rather than living with God in the garden forever, having the tree of life available to them, they were going to die. They weren't going to die immediately, but this was the consequence of their disobedience. And then in our final section, verses 20 through 24, the man and the woman are removed from the Garden of Eden. Adam is said to have named his wife Eve because she was the mother of all living. God made the man, Adam, and Eve garments to wear from animal skins to cover their nakedness. He then removed them from the Garden of Eden so that they would no longer have access to the tree of life, which would allow them to live forever. And so that is Genesis chapter 3. Now let's talk about our application before we close. Sin separates us from God and ruins our world. And there's no clearer story of that than the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve no longer enjoyed the same relationship with God, and no longer enjoyed the company of God in the same way after their sins. They were removed from the garden, which was a life of ease and a life of blessing, and they were thrust out into a cursed world, a world of difficulty. Notice the serpent lied to them about the outcome of their disobedience. So he made it sound like life would be better if they disobeyed God and they ate that fruit, but it actually turned out much worse. And this is very applicable because Satan still uses the same tactics against modern day men and women. He makes empty promises that are full of an illusion of a better life. But in the end, our life ends up worse when we follow his advice, and we end up separated from God because of our rebellion to him. And so our life gets harder, we are separated from the one who created us. It's a lose-lose situation. Life tip here, the devil is always lying. And if you don't take anything else away from that study, I think that will be an application that you can apply over a lifetime.